Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel's Reverse Flash God. Chapter 61. Soldiers ready to go. Of course, General, you'll see me crush its head to pieces. Emil Blonsky is preparing his luggage, and with him is General Ross, the general commander of the hunting plan. In this temporary residence not far from Boston University City, it has been completely renovated. The entrance to the room that became a military control area faced the university town grassland. The wide field of vision here is enough to ambush a large number of soldiers, as well as tanks and more military weapons preparing to enter the site. General Ross has always been worried about the failure of the hunting plan in Indonesia 2 months ago. Bronsky is his backhand, but Ross Jianjun hopes not to use him. Emil Bronsky was once a Croatian agent who served the KGB organization of the former Soviet Union. However, after the drastic changes in Eastern Europe, Bronsky became a stateless mercenary soldier. His superb combat skills and pursuit of bloody slaughter made him want to participate into every battle. It was for this reason that General Ross decided to recruit this obviously unstable factor into his team. The team originally used to hunt down Bruce Banner was now all led by Blonsky. But unfortunately, just 2 months ago, Bruce Banner escaped during the Indonesian encirclement and suppression plan. So General Ross had to find another way to bring Bruce Banner back to the laboratory. At this moment, Blonsky's body has been injected with an improved blood sample of Bruce Banner. Full of endless strength and incredible ability to heal serious injuries, Blonsky is more like a comparative experimental sample to General Ross than a weapon to be used, but first of all, Bronsky needs to be under his control. Keep yourself safe, your life now belongs to this country. General Ross dedicated his life to his motherland. His indifferent attitude never regarded Bronsky as a living creature, but as a test subject. We'll pay attention. After a pause, Bronsky's gaze had shifted to the window. Now as the timer started, the first team to sneak into the campus had set off towards the library. The crazy General Ross used his daughter as bait and placed a tracker on Betty Ross, and happened to use her relationship with Bruce Banner to capture him. At this moment, Bruce Banner could be seen through the telescope of the frontline scout. Meeting Betty Ross. Stim him but don't kill him. General Ross seemed to see victory right in front of his eyes, but before that he also needed a little insurance. The military needs a living Hulk, not a dead Bruce Banner. In downtown Boston, blatant armed entry into the city. I like such a big move. Jaeon was talking to himself as he ran wildly. Now he is like a young man who has got a new toy and hopes to express his vitality more. Of course, to put it another way, Jaeon is now eager to use his abilities, to cause some turmoil that can be blamed. Bad guys with ulterior motives followed the trajectory of the armored vehicle and entered Boston University in the blocked area. Call. A gust of wind passed by, and the soldiers stationed at Lanka felt as if something suddenly hung in front of their eyes. The bright sunshine blocked the visibility of most people from the bright light appearing in the air, even if Riang was right in front of them. Walking by in front of them, at such a speed, almost everyone would just think that a gust of wind had hit their eyes. Jung continued to move forward, and his speed was so fast that most military satellites could not catch it. Only by scanning the entire city at fixed points and calculating accurately to 18,000 decimal places could we find where he was. Although this is not difficult to do at the current level, who cares about a person who just runs around? Nick Fury will. The fool who doesn't stop all day. Nick Fury stood in the SHIELD terminal control room. This huge room was filled with observations from SHIELD's 128 global military satellites from all corners of the world. Today, the Lightning Man appeared in Boston and was about to start a fight with General Ross. Plans collided. Nick Fury decided to take matters into his own hands and used more than 50 military satellites capable of monitoring all of North America to conduct unit searches. At the same time, using SHIELD's internal supercomputer for calculation and analysis, Nick Fury needs to know clearly the current location of the Lightning Man and his purpose. Nick Fury does not want his focus to conflict with the military. Dr. Banner is already asking him to find a way to operate it, and if there is trouble again here, it will be quite troublesome. It's the governor of Boston University City. The subordinate agents found the previous location of Jaeon from the final result analysis 3 seconds ago. Although Jaeon must have arrived at another location at the next moment, for Nick Fury now, it's the last thing he wants to see now. Shit, When Nick Fury encountered the troublesome Guy Ross at the same time, Nick Fury's angry curse was the same as his current mood. Boom. Boston University. Riang followed the arc thunderbolt and flew forward. After following the armed chariot into the blockade area, Riang was surprised to find that unlike outside the blockade area, the distribution of the university town in the blockade area did not seem to be affected in any way. The teachers and students here seemed unaware of what was about to happen not far away from them. At the same time, the real-time monitoring built into the suit that Jean turned on also lost contact with the laboratory in the basement of the apartment. In other words, communication here is blocked. What do these guys want to do? Jean surpassed the originally following regiment and rushed into the university town alone. At super speed, Jean's observation and search abilities were close to perfect, and everything remained still to others. But in just a moment, Jung was able to run through the entire area of the university town. And what did he find? A band of sneaky soldiers. Standing in front of the library door, all the idle personnel here have been cleared. Jung cannot see the expressions of these soldiers through their helmets, but their target is in the library. It can be seen from an oblique angle. The target location is being displayed on the soldier leader's tracker. So who are their targets? Riang pinched the finger of the soldier leader and took the tracker in his hand. Riang instantly entered the library and searched and scanned everyone present according to the target of the tracker. This restless guy began to have great curiosity about the target in the tracker. Why did he or she attract the great attention of the military? The red light on the tracker began to flash as Jean passed a woman after passing most of the students. In fact, before the red light dimmed, the moment the message receiving device generated inside the tracker received the message feedback and transmitted the electrical signal induction inside the suit gave a hot message feedback. Everything happened in one place, within an instant. From the outside, it seemed that Jung just snatched the tracker from the hands of the soldier leader outside the library, and in the next moment ran back and stuffed the tracker back into his hand. The red light came on, but the flashing stopped after a moment. Click click. The strange sound effects caused by the flashing lights made the team members mistakenly believe that something was wrong with the target. However, after 3 seconds passed, the red light stopped flashing and the distance in the tracker remained normal. Operation Machine Failure continues. Receive. Immediately, the team continued to follow up and lurk. 3 team members floated on both sides of the library corridor to place explosive bags. The other 5 team members led by the team leader and another sniper in the building diagonally opposite to the library. The hands are already in place. Riang's time flow rate is still completely different from that of these soldiers. After confirming that the target of the other party's tracking was a woman, Riang rummaged through all the information about the woman almost instantly, but obviously he did not find anything unusual except for apart from a library borrowing permit with partial identification information, the woman didn't even bring her wallet or cell phone. Jean didn't care about the identities of the men beside the lady at different time flows. They seemed to be very nervous. However, he failed to find the news he wanted in the first time. Jean again returned to the team outside the library. But just a moment ago, when the team leader finished signaling to the distant high-rise building at a high side angle through sign language, Jeon saw a faint reflection in one of the rooms, if only for a brief and feeble moment. That's a sniper rifle. Boom. Lightning ran wildly, and Jean no longer paid attention to what was going on in the library. The presence of the sniper attracted his attention even more. It turned into an arc of lightning and passed through the grassland in the sun. Jean rushed to the building where the sniper was. Until Jean completely reached the room where the sniper was, only a second had passed since the sniper received the news from the front. Jung did not pass directly through the window but vibrated his body through the masonry wall to get behind the sniper. In the silent environment, Riang seemed to be invisible in the darkness, standing behind him. The skuas are in place. Receive action begins. Click click. The bullets in the sniper rifle were loaded, and from his angle, he could see everything in the library opposite. This was an almost perfect gathering place. At the same time, the forward assault team of soldiers also launched an attack on the library. Pong! Violent break-in. The soldier led the attack, and then the subordinate team members poured in from all corners to surround the library, and quickly surrounded the core area with the tracking target as the target. There was chaos in the library for a while. General Ross did not get approval from any authority for this military operation, nor did he make any announcement or speech in advance. He directly used a large-scale shielding device to block the message channel. At the same time, General Ross once again used with lightning speed, he launched a thunderous blow to Bruce Banner. So much so that during this process, General Ross did not consider whether it would cause casualties to innocent people. Fire. Bruce Banner's appearance has been remembered by every soldier in this attack team. As a general, Ross has no concern for his daughter's life. Likewise, as the executors of orders, they are not pulling the bolt of their guns, moment any doubt arises. It can be said that every soldier in the team is a carefully selected sharpshooter. They can completely hit at close range without accidentally injuring Betty Ross's body, but obviously Bruce Banner doesn't think so. Let him turn into a monster and then kill him. General Ross almost issued an order with a roaring voice on the communication channel. He could foresee what would happen if his daughter was unfortunately hit by a stray bullet. She will become a national hero after this operation. But the premise is that the action cannot fail. So General Ross gave the order to attack, using Betty Ross as bait to induce mutations in Bruce Banner. Roar! Bruce Banner transformed just like they wanted. After the sudden break-in and the undeclared gunfire at the next moment, Betty, who was almost completely blocked in front of Bruce Banner, completely became a target. Bruce Banner also pushed her behind him at the same moment. The shift in position meant that Bruce Banner took over Betty Ross's position. Dozens of bullets instantly reduced Bruce Banner's body to a sieve. Beautifully done. General Ross can see everything at the scene through the surveillance screen. He does not believe that Bruce Banner is dead. What he cheers is that his daughter is still alive. Keep shooting, put pressure on him. General Ross continued to shout. And at the same time the attack happened. The moment he saw all the changes in the other person's picture through the telescope, Jean realized that he seemed to have thought something wrong. I thought that the man next to the lady was just an insignificant role. Even Jung had thought about whether the lady targeted by the tracker would be wanted for betraying state secrets. Jung, who had two simple ideas, suddenly discovered that this was the so-called military thinking, and it was completely different from what he had thought. Should I be called a fool? Jung couldn't help but feel slander in his mind, but similarly, this guy who wanted to disrupt the situation also made his own little move at the same time that the incident started. Shoo! By shaking his body, Jung stood behind the sniper. At the moment when Bruce Banner hit the ground under the telescope, his hand patted the sniper's shoulder. Who is it? Who? At the same time the sniper turned back, Jean's shaking hand knife had already pierced his chest. Tisk 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 tisk. Sniper always likes to sneak attack on others, it just so happens that this is also my hobby. Riang's palm was still inserted into the opponent's bloody chest, and the flowing blood was blocked at the wound and could not spurt out immediately. However, the shock and disbelief written on the sniper's face made Riang feel huge satisfaction. I hate guys who use guns to do tricks behind their backs, so I'm sorry, I have to ask you to go to hell. Then, pooh. Blood spread all over the telescope, and the scarlet picture fell as the sniper fell. On the other side of the picture, Bruce Banner, whose chest was also covered in scarlet, slowly stood up from the ground. Blow his brains out. I got it, sir. Jung took over the communicator that belonged to the sniper and replied to the other end. Jaeon, who had seen almost the entire process and knew the opponent's plan, was determined to become a complete spoiler, so the action started from this moment. Blow his brains out for me. Roger, Jahan replied to General Ross's channel. Boom, lightning broke out, and the lightning rushed toward the library, targeting their heads. We are all sharpshooters, every bullet kills an enemy. Bang, bang 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 bang. Lightning speed. Riang quickly passed through each soldier's body under the influence of the speed force, and flicked his fingers to easily shoot out lightning bolts that hit their heads, just like the order given by General Ross on the communication channel to blow his head off. Jaeon was everything General Ross wanted, even though he was not it. In just an instant, the strong wind blew into the library again. This time, Jung did not hide any of his actions. He completely exposed himself to the other party's surveillance. Anyway, from all the traces, it can be seen that the only one who did it was the world. The only speedster on the planet. Dude, are you awake? Lying on the ground was Bruce Banner, who was already showing signs of recovery. His originally thin body expanded instantly as he was dying. It looked like the man's body had grown a lot stronger. As Riang appeared and spoke, the soldier whose head was pierced by electricity fell to the ground. Pong! Like complete wax figures, they collapsed on the ground. All the members of the commando team were killed in an instant. The electric current destroyed their brain structure so that these people were no longer alive in an instant. Breathe. Are you the devil? Betty Ross was frightened by what she saw. She had no time to care about Bruce Banner's safety. The man in front of her shook his body like a devil from hell. With his yellow leather clothes and scarlet eyes, he was the messenger of Satan. I am the devil who only eats girls. Why don't you look at your friend? He seems to be in pain. Riang played a trick without paying any attention to the panicked students around him, and stopped shaking his body to have him talk to Betty Ross in his normal state. Your friend is going to transform into a Sakino Usagi type. Jaeon moved his fingers around Bruce Banner. The green and white skin color suddenly gave Jaeon a bad premonition. His hunch is always right. To Betty Ross, the man who suddenly appeared in front of her looked very strange. Although he solved the soldiers who were tracking Banner, Betty Ross could also imagine that this was a team sent by her father. Betty Ross was able to, after judging that Riang had no malicious intent, she began to worry about her own safety. At the same time, Betty Ross feels very troubled about Bruce Banner's safety. Now that Banner is about to transform again, it is an absolutely unstable factor. This is school Banner, hold on, you can't transform here. Betty Ross pushed away Jung's body and leaned down to hug her boyfriend. Her call seemed to have a weak effect, and Bruce could be seen. Banner's condition began to improve slightly. But this is of no help to the increasingly bad transformation situation. What a monster he will turn into. It's a monster that will destroy the whole city. Please help me. Betty Ross was in panic. She turned around and saw the students and teachers swarming around to escape to the library exit. Betty Ross was betrayed by her father. And now she can't even find anyone who can help her and Banner. Obviously, the weirdo in yellow leather who had just killed the soldier was her only choice. Yes, of course, Jean heard Betty Rose's plea for help, but a moment later, a heat wave suddenly came from behind, and Jean's premonition came true again. The communication was cut off. Our attack team encountered a sniper. General Ross saw something completely different from what he expected from the surveillance screen. The weirdo in yellow leather suddenly appeared and had just killed their sniper in the hiding building opposite the library before the screen switched. However, after a screen switch, with just a click of the mouse, this guy had already ran into the library and killed all his soldiers. Who is this guy? Don't worry about him. I only care about the life and death of that monster. If it is an enemy, kill it together. General Ross did not pay attention to Bronsky's question. He cold-bloodedly issued further orders. Do you need me to remind you that you will blow up your daughter? Bronsky had finished organizing all the equipment, and he was about to step out of the command post and enter the battlefield. All combat units are in place. Your mission is to kill it or capture it alive. If Betty encounters misfortune, people across the country will mourn her, and her existence will go down in history. Now, execute your orders and detonate the explosives. General Ross may be crazy. He did not pay attention to the doubts of his subordinates. He remained as cold-blooded and stubborn as ever in his insistence on orders. He did not resort to any means to achieve his goals. Even his wife and children could be abandoned at will. General Ross pressed the remote control button. Bang! The ring of explosives buried around the library exploded completely, and a sea of fire swept through the entire library building. The corridors were instantly shattered, and countless innocent teachers and students suffered accidents, and all this was just the beginning for its biggest culprit, General Ross. The flames of the explosion are just a signal. A small team may not be able to kill Bruce Banner, and Blonsky is just a means for General Ross. He also has an entire army on standby outside the university city, and now, the army is setting off. Sir, the Lightning Man has joined in Zizizizi. Nick Fury, who is flying a C-17 aircraft, is in the process of joining the battlefield. Perhaps he could have arrived with an aerospace carrier. But the significance of that thing is too great, and now is not the time to expose it, so Nick Fury chose the fastest aircraft that can be achieved by current science and technology. This thing is fast enough without considering Iron Man's suit. A communication message came from the aerospace aircraft carrier. but it entered the message fuzzy area halfway through loading, which meant that Nick Fury had sailed into the shielding range activated by General Ross in Boston. However, this is not the point. What Nick Fury really cares about is what the Lightning Man who always likes to cause trouble for him is doing. If the Flash had joined the fight, nothing could be worse for Nick Fury. Bruce Banner, two troublesome guys, frowned. Nick Fury pushed the C-17 propulsion device to the top. Boom. The C-17, which was accelerated to an overload state, ejected a nearly white tail flame and galloped towards the university town with an explosion that doubled the speed of sound. Help me. Betty Ross looked helplessly at the person in front of her who might be the only one who could help her. Jean Flash instantly killed all the soldiers and slaughtered them like a devil, but he also saved her and Bruce Banner. Although the current situation is still quite bad. Get out of the way quickly. Jean didn't seem to hear Betty Rose's cry for help. He turned into a bolt of lightning and quickly grabbed the lady while running, put her ungentlemanly resistance on his shoulders and rushed forward. Bang! A violent explosion followed, with stone debris and glass fragments flying in all directions under the sound of the explosion. An unstoppable force destroyed everything in the library. Perhaps there were precious classics and books in the library material. But facing the emotionless destructive power of the explosion is completely futile. What soldiers need is results, what generals want is efficiency, and the so-called accidents and battle losses need to be considered after the battle. No one will now not caring about these external things. All the people in the library ran outside like crazy. But the shock and heat wave from outside the library blew everyone back again, like a sledgehammer that perfectly tore everyone's coats apart, and the disaster occurred. Banner, Betty Ross, who was assigned the Speed Force, could feel that everything around her was at a standstill while Jean was running. During the explosion, she could clearly see the force rapidly expanding outwards. The man carrying her was a magical guy, but Betty Ross's full attention was now on Bruce Banner. She, unlike the coldness she once showed verbally, she is Bruce Banner's lover who truly cares about him. Boom. But Riang, this man who stepped on debris and stones, was able to dance through the blasts with ease. The barrier formed by his speed had a bug-like ability that blocked him from more than 999 impacts, without following the rules. The Speed Force itself, which governs most physical rules, drags Jung's body to run in the face of adversity. Miss, if you really care about your lover, then protect your own safety and he will be fine. Don't cause trouble for me. Boom. The words ended, and after that, Jean also placed Betty Ross in a safe area on the grass downstairs outside the library. The speed of more than 1,000 kilometers per hour allowed Jean to repeatedly take out students in countless sprints in a short period of time. They reach a safe place. It can be said that without Betty, Jean himself would not want to save people. A Betty Ross caught the attention of Jean, and Jean who saved her would also save Bruce Banner. When Jean's hand was released from Betty Rose's shoulder, Betty, who was about to say something, suddenly realized that she could no longer keep up with Jean's speed. The Speed Force left her body, and Jean became even more. Get up quickly. Perhaps Jaeon imagined that he could take everyone out of the library before the woman could say anything. One more is not more, one less is not more. Since you can protect more people, why not do this? That's exactly what it is. Boom. Boom 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 boom. Rays of lightning shuttled back and forth between the grassland and the exploding library. Jung was like an elf in the explosion. Flame and lightning became his most beautiful coat, even though just 3 days ago he was labeled as fool by the New York police. A criminal who robbed a bank, but today he did something heroic. Who? I almost exhausted myself. I won't let you, just wait. Madam, your man will be next. Jaeon visited countless people from the library, although time was still passing, or for Jaeon himself, everything around him seemed to be still, except for the explosions and debris that could rub against the air in their flight trajectories. Vaguely the visible arc can tell how fast Riang is. Until he finally came to Bruce Banner's side, this man looked particularly painful. During the explosion, Bruce Banner's brows furrowed and he curled up his clothes with his hands. It was hard to imagine that this guy had been shot dozens of times. It can also be resurrected. And this is also the reason why Riang finally chose to save him. Man, your name is Banner, right? Hold on. Jung began to fall in love with this kind of manual labor that was busy working for others, both in terms of attention and self-satisfaction. If Freya can come back and see me in the future. Riang's mind couldn't help but think of the good results he got in the end from the same efforts. At the same time, his hand touched Bruce Banner's body, and Jean tried to carry the man behind his back. Unlike his girlfriend Betty Ross, Jean had no intention of carrying this strong man who seemed to have swelled up. The most correct action is to pick someone up and carry him on his back. But the moment the Speed Force came into contact with Banner, lightning travels instantly. Click 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 click. A sound of bone twisting came from Bruce Banner's body. Jung felt his pores expand at this moment, but the speed of being shared brought his physical energy quickly towards Bruce Banner's body. What have I done? It was too late for Jaeon to regret and interrupt his behavior. His hand had already grabbed Bruce's body, and similarly, a monster named Hulk also grabbed Jaeon's body. Roar! A monster hidden in the bloodline has awakened. Dong! Viewed from the sky above Boston University City, from the direction of the library, following the explosion, a bright yellow object suddenly flew out of the originally inconspicuous building, and then rolled back and forth several times on the grass before finally under stagnation. The force ends only when the affected unit receives a huge blow. At this moment, Riang felt that his body was about to fall apart, just like Sheriff Lesta in the comics, even stronger. This was simply a prehistoric monster. Jean once arrogantly believed that he was the most special mutant in the world, but until he saw Bruce Banner's transformation, Jean began to doubt whether his power was powerful. Even though he briefly escaped from the monster transformed by Bruce Banner through the shock, what followed was just a wave of his hand. It can be concluded that if Riang had not worn this suit, if his suit had not been upgraded and there was no gel buffer layer inside and outside the suit, he would have been a dead man. Thank God. Jaeon collapsed on the grass. His body still had a weak sense and could control normal actions, but the severe pain came from the impact damage to various parts of the body. Fortunately, he survived. The speedster on his back is doubting his life at this moment. At this time, an arc flying across the horizon came into Riang's sight. What is that? Jung saw a missile. After his eyes followed the position of the missile and looked to the other side, the Hulk jumped out of the hole in the library and rushed towards it. Today, the protagonist does not belong to the speedster, it belongs to the Hulk. Hulk! Green-skinned monsters roared from the sky and trampled the grassland into cracks. The Hulk, transformed by Bruce Banner, seemed to have only primitive beast instincts, and his challenge and intuition for danger were higher than most of his subjects' consciousness. Swoosh! The cruise missile has been launched in the sky, with enough destructive power to completely reduce a 120-story high-rise building to rubble, and it hit the Hulk's body right on the ground. Call! The heat, which was more violent than the explosion of the explosive pile, swept in all directions. Riang, who was also on the grassland, reluctantly propped up his body and turned on the speed force again to resist the blast of heat. The high temperature made Riang's suit reach the temperature reached tens of degrees Celsius. Jaeon, who had never considered the internal cooling system before, was now suffering from his own design. Boom! But at least Jaeon managed to leave the center of the destruction before he was blasted by the heat. Jaeon, who does not have the same super physical strength and resistance to blows as the Hulk, is unparalleled in speed. Lightning quickly ran around the periphery of the grassland, and in just a short time, in an instant, Riang had arrived outside the pasture. But obviously, Riang has had some minor accidents that are not troublesome. Hi! It was an awkward greeting. When Riang stopped, a group of soldiers appeared in front of him. The soldiers who were lying in ambush in the woods were waiting for the order to go up to the peak. However, Riang's unannounced visit shocked everyone. They were facing a formidable enemy. Fire! I don't know who gave the order. In short, the appearance of Riang means that they have been exposed. The soldiers' code requires them to make emergency judgments in the most urgent situation to protect themselves first, so this lurking team immediately launched the firing order. Ta 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 ta. The Hague-10 has built-in armor-piercing bullets, which are standard equipment for attacking teams. Each bullet costs more than $, but now these high destructive weapons are equipped with an entire team, faster the shooting speed, faster lethality, and more powerful penetration effect. The thermal weapons originally used to deal with the Hulk, the prehistoric beast, are now used to deal with the sudden thermal attack. But this team may never understand what they went through in that moment until they die. I hate it when someone puts a gun to my head. Bang! Lightning broke out at close range. The moment the soldiers pulled the trigger, Riang completed the shock to his body. He reached a perfect vibration fit with the bullets in the hail of bullets. Buzz buzz buzz. In the flash of lightning, Riang was already standing behind the team. The stagnant timeline still existed in the senses of Riang, who was in the lightning state. But what can be concluded is that the team will be the one in the next second. It ended with the annihilation of the entire army. Call. The shadow arrived first, then the wind. The tail of the electric arc returned to Riang's body, and the lightning speed ended, and behind him, all the soldiers fell to the ground in response. Boston University City Army Temporary Garrison. The detection system found no signs of life within the target range. The latest news came from the subordinate sergeant staff, although this could be clearly seen in the electronic monitoring in front of him. General Ross watched nervously as the scenes on the surveillance screen changed. He hoped that Hulk would not die from this missile, but he was afraid of what would happen if he really couldn't kill this monster. But as a general's superior, General Ross immediately issued further orders. Order the lurker team to immediately carry out a secondary strike on the target, and determine whether the target is alive or dead. What a fuss, no one can survive in such an environment if it can. Blonsky on the side is ready to go. He also hopes to see Hulk stand up, so that he can fight this monster to the death. Opportunity, but also for a creature that can survive a missile explosion, based on a soldier's common sense, this is impossible. You are also prepared for what we have to deal with. Before he finished speaking, a roar came from the surveillance camera, followed by the strong wind blowing on the grass. Roar. Hulk's angry roar. After the rich flames and dust dissipated, Hulk pushed aside the smoke screen and barrier like a demon god and walked out of the smoke unscathed, as if he was provocative and still had unfulfilled intentions. After a fierce jump, Kay trampled the grassland into pieces again. The roaring sound waves can even cause small whirlwinds to uproot nearby grass seedlings. In just a moment, Hulk has used his beast-like precision to capture the first surveillance vehicle hidden in the woods near the pasture, and tore it apart with one punch. Start immediately, and you, Blonsky. General Ross immediately issued the order to attack. Click click. Blonsky was ready to jump out of the building and proved his efficiency with practical actions. He quickly rushed towards the Hulk's location. After being injected with a diluted sample of Hulk's blood, Blonsky had strength and speed far exceeding that of an ordinary person. However, this also inspired his combative mentality. An inexplicable self-confidence made Blonsky particularly inflated. He believed that he could fight the Hulk. But can he suffer death, monster? The brave and fearless Blonsky rushed into the battlefield like a chariot. While Hulk's stiff body carried countless guns, Blonsky roared like a tiger descending the mountain and pounced on him. Hulk's head. Pong. Bew. Lize. In the temporary army command post, General Ross saw everything that happened with his own eyes. He saw Blonsky, who was swatted away by Hulk like a fly, and fell upside down into the soil of the grassland. After the battle, the logistics personnel will check to see if he is still alive. Don't waste our experimental materials. General Ross shook his head silently. Blonsky disappointed him as expected, but obviously this was not all the means arranged by General Ross. While the Hulk on the front line continued to compete with the army, they originally ambushed. It's time for the armor-breaking team to take the field. Call the armor-piercing team and snipe the monsters immediately, regardless of life or death. General Ross issued instructions to the team in the communication, but after several silent moments passed. Please answer. General Ross, who had been waiting for no results for a long time, had a bad feeling about this team, until he ordered his subordinate non-commissioned officers to switch the monitoring to the team and found out. The whole army has been wiped out. It's this guy again. Who can tell me who he is? The furious General Ross saw the current situation of the armor-breaking team that was all killed in an instant in the picture 20 seconds ago, as well as the yellow leather jacket that stopped at the end of the picture. Zhang. By now, General Ross must admit that this uninvited guest in yellow leather has completely entered his sight. Initiate emergency plan immediately. Kill it, kill him. This may be General Ross's last order within the headquarters. With the two missteps in preparing the means, it is foreseeable that this has meant failure in the mission of capturing or killing the Hulk. General Ross must be determined to face whatever comes next. So he must leave here as soon as possible, but this does not mean that he has given up on the Hulk and Jaeon. On the contrary, General Ross is at his craziest moment right now. Boom boom boom. Golden lightning surrounded this hot body and began to accelerate his movement into a super speed running state. Just after Riang took care of all the soldiers, it could be said that no military spy could be seen in this corner of the grassland, but Riang did not choose to stay here, and he still entered the super speed run again. It's really because the temperature in the suit is too high. A high temperature of tens of degrees Celsius is terrifying for anyone. Jaeon never considered the issue of heat dissipation when he first made war intent. Usually running at accelerating speed will drive Jaeon away. Rapid depletion of body metabolism. The volatilized heat and sweat will directly vaporize into the air. Until now, the real high temperature and suffocation made Riang miserable. He had already made up his mind to modify this design of the suit when he went back. Riang began to regret why he didn't consider it in the first place. More comprehensive. Run, run. Like an unmistakable bolt of lightning, Jaeon rapidly shook his body. During acceleration, it could only intersect with the updraft and take away a small amount of heat energy in the suit. Considering that the colloid is not resistant to vibration, Jaeon also needs to pay attention to it. Will this destroy the coating on the outside of the suit? Another hidden danger has been discovered. It is foreseeable that after this, Zheng still has a long way to go in the improvement and design of the suit. Not only the material, performance, and applicability have also become a measure of the reliability of the suit. Basic antecedent conditions. It's like sightseeing, although this is not enjoyment at all. From Jaeon's perspective, everything on the battlefield is like a slowed-down picture. This time, Jaeon, who is smart, no longer tries to interfere with the monster. Any body part. The powerful power frightened him, but seeing the battle between the Hulk and the military made him think that this was the real aesthetics of violence. Zhang is like the third neutral unit on the battlefield. He does not participate in the battle against the Hulk or the military, but he is alone. The absolute speed gives Zhang the opportunity to never be hit head-on. Maybe, if he's careful enough. The lightning was galloping, causing a burst of golden wind to hang over the entire large grassland. It seemed that every unit participating in this battle would see the afterimage of Riang, but it was never possible to know in which corner he would appear. Until Jen's sight saw a military helicopter leaving from a distance. It's a new weapon. Just where General Ross left, in the position where the army had been stationed, the tents covered by layers of straw and frames were finally opened. That was an armored vehicle that entered the university town from head to toe. After that, the gun holes slowly rising from the armored vehicle revealed its ferociousness. Fire, boom, shooting from condensation. The whole process would not take more than 5 seconds. The commander standing on the armored vehicle only waved the command flag once, so fast that even Jean could not fully see what was happening. Boom, it had an effect first, and then the sonic cannon fired with a loud bang. The destructive energy condensed and released by the overfrequency shock wave directly hits the Hulk's body. Buzz. Simple and rude. The power of the sonic cannon cannot be described in detail here. In short, the missiles that could have reduced the library building to rubble failed to destroy the entire grassland, but this cannon did it. Even the helicopters originally on standby of the military have become its target. The indiscriminate and invincible Mi's comprehensive and devastating strike effect. Even with Hulk's body strength, if the front is hit, it will be immediately blasted to the outermost periphery of the sonic cannon, which is the weakest. On the first ring position. It can be seen from the front of Yinlang that Hulk's body muscles have been distorted and deformed by the bombardment. The muscles as strong as stones are now rolling in waves. Hulk is using all his strength to resist the sonic cannon, bombardment. And everything around Hulk has ceased to exist. Oh my god. This was the last thing that Jean thought about before he flew out. In fact, Riang could have avoided it, but if he hadn't been stunned for a short while. Buzzing. The speed force exploded, just like the Hulk's physical strength. When the golden lightning that looked around the entire grassland was wiped out by this blow, Riang's figure was finally caught by people's sight, just as he was getting closer to the Hulk. In a few positions, Riang exploded with all his strength and the speed force surged crazily. The extremely bright golden lightning became a powerful resistance that could compete with the sonic cannon. Roar! The Hulk standing behind Jaeon seems to have been provoked. Its childlike nature makes it try to catch up with everything it is interested in or beyond. Now Jaeon is slightly stronger than it. Pong! Hulk stepped forward hard, and the grassland was filled with pits and cracks. Hulk took half a step forward. Increase the output and kill it. The commander on the tank was far from feeling the same as the two people at the core of the sonic cannon. He just continued to increase the output power. A round of stronger output arrives. But at the same time, a cruel smile appeared on Riang's expression. Boom! Lightning bursts, reverse transcendence. What does he want to do? This is the question that General Ross is most concerned about now on the plane. Even at the same time, Hulk, who was also bombarded by sonic cannons in the picture, was immediately pushed closer after Jaeon left in an instant, in the rear position. And this once again aroused the monster's ferocity. But now General Ross's attention has been completely focused on the leaving Lightning Man. The difference between the picture and the actual external situation is several seconds. This is due to the shielding device. However, General Ross, who is under the inertial thinking of a soldier, has not really understood the extreme speed. What does this new definition mean? Only the fastest can defeat the fastest. Ahem, although there are sometimes exceptions. Under the bombardment of several times the speed of sound, even if Riang explodes with the speed force, it will be of no avail. It is impossible for him to withstand the bombardment of the sonic cannon at the closest distance from the core position. However, why does Jaeon want to be so close? This is a logical question. Reality is not an online game, and tanks and grasslands are never the final bosses of fighting in a fixed circle. Directly bombarding the direction from the front, the sonic cannon used super destructive power to destroy everything. Its power is beyond doubt. But what about the side? When the burst of super speed doubled and condensed, Riang exploded with overloaded heat in his suit, even if it was enough to burn all the coating on the surface of his suit. But it doesn't matter anymore. Speed is power. Speed 3600. Zhang achieved a new breakthrough. Even Zhang himself could no longer keep up with his own movements at such a speed. But if the comparison is placed in an environment where everything remains still. Just a roundabout run, Jean bypassed the bombardment of the sonic cannon from the side. Boom boom boom. Lightning, flint, thunder and lightning. A piece of ruins and wreckage, as well as a panting speedster. He destroyed this tank. God. In the delayed scene, General Ross was speechless for a long time. This is the real super soldier. When Riang's lightning demolished an entire tank, in just 1 second, the faces of all the soldiers present were confused. The sudden stop of the sonic blast caused Hulk to regain his mobility instantly, but compared to Hulk, General Ross is now more concerned about the appearance of Jaeon in the surveillance screen, a nearly perfect template of a super soldier. Perfect speed, powerful strength, fascinating battlefield cohesion, and the appeal to win back a city in adversity. It is conceivable that if such super soldiers are put on the battlefield in batches, it will be a crushing force for thousands. Kill him and get his sample for me. General Ross yelled crazily on the communication channel. His sanity seemed to disappear with his enthusiasm. As a battlefield commander, this was unqualified, but General Ross simply didn't know what he was doing now. Don't care about these things anymore. He wants to get all the information about Jaeon. If you don't take me alive, I will live. It seems that he realized that his fanaticism will directly affect the direct combat effectiveness of the soldiers on the front line who have not yet collapsed. General Ross finally stabilized his expression, but the greed and possessiveness behind his expression, but it's hard to hide. Such a gaffe is disgraceful. You have no idea what kind of monster you're dealing with, Ross. The door of the plane seemed to have been opened. When General Ross was still immersed in his delusions, the sudden interruption diverted his attention. This was a military transport plane, and the plane that could cross the border and come directly to his plane people. Judging by the sound, General Ross came up with a name he really hated. Nick Fury. It's me, Katja. Wearing a red-on-black windbreaker, Nick the One-Eyed Dragon kicked open the door of the plane and jumped in from outside. Just outside the aircraft carried by General Ross, the Shield C-17 special fighter aircraft kept pace with it, flying at the same speed and with high technical content. Obviously, the C-17, which contains the technology of the 5 rogue countries, is even better. Nick Fury's dashing arrival gave General Ross a headache. He was afraid of what he wanted. While General Ross made Nick Fury completely disgusted by capturing the Hulk, he was also afraid of the organization that controlled the most powerful organization in the world, Guy. This operation was not reported by General Ross before the military. Any of his political opponents can use countless reasons to pull him down after the failure of this operation. General Ross is racing against time, and as it happens, Nick Fury is the kind of person who is a stepping stone in the position of General Ross. Why did you come, Nick? For them. Nick Fury looked out the window. The semi-finished super soldier potion made Nick Fury remain motionless even under the strong wind outside the cabin. The strong wind blew his windbreaker, but he still looked extremely handsome. His braised egg head was filled with a solemn expression. Severe, at least in terms of momentum, it is even better than Ross, who is already in a state of defeat. Outside the cabin, the grassland of Boston University City. The grassy field that was supposed to be the green scene of Boston University is already in disarray. Bodies and metal debris can be seen everywhere. Gun smoke can be faintly seen even in the suburbs several kilometers away. The thick smoke left by the bomb blast seems to cover everything here. The originally non-stop clicking of firearms has completely stopped at this time. With the end of the military's last killer weapon, the sonic car, this battle between the Army and the Hulk has completely come to an end. However, the victory between them is expected. It now belongs to another unexpected visitor. Jean French. Hoo. After the breathless Jean completed the violent demolition work, the instantaneous increase in speed disappeared in an instant. 3,600 kilometers per hour was a dreamy figure even for Jean. The shock of the sonic cannon was superimposed on the speed force for a long time. Exerts a greater force, but again, it is a huge load on Jean's body. Riang was seen covering his mask with one hand, while the other hand was barely supporting his knee. Facing the soldiers gradually approaching around him, Riang wanted to explode and accelerate again, but maybe he could do it in a short time. Not like this anymore. For a group of soldiers who received an order from the top to capture the mission target alive, Riang's life and death had nothing to do with them. What they cared about was whether this guy still had the ability to resist. The powerful aftershock of lightning shocked Xiao Xiao, but he was equally weak. There are also wolves among dogs that can turn into extremely evil. When the crowd gathered together, the courage of the soldiers began to slowly approach the direction of Jen and surrounded him. No one dared to fire a shot, because Jen was obviously not the Hulk monster. Although he had super speed, who can bet whether a bullet will kill him? Ross's orders were to capture him alive. This is a big deal. Jeon, who had been completely paralyzed by super acceleration, now found it extremely difficult to even move his fingers. Facing nearly 100 soldiers holding armor-piercing weapons, Jeon felt that he was lucky today. God bless. Zhang kept shouting in his heart, hoping that he could move. Zira. The crackle of the speed force began to appear weakly on his body surface, but these tiny arcs obviously did not constitute the minimum value that could drive a complete individual to run very fast. Click. When the first bullet was loaded, Zhang saw the dark muzzle of the gun he hated most, and it began to point at him and at his feet. These soldiers are going to break his legs. A speedster with a broken leg cannot run. Finished. In an instant, Riang's heart was half cold. May God bless him. God, my God, if there is a miracle in a desperate situation, it must be that God is blessing someone. In other words, Jeon, this fool, has never been religious. Thank God. Wow. Boom. A green figure falls from the sky. It is not God. God is Hulk. Hulk roar. The angry prehistoric beast let out a roar. Compared to the situation in Poland, the entire layer of soil on the grassland that was destroyed in an instant was the most terrifying thing. One jump, a full 150 meters. Bang! The Hulk fell next to Zhang like a cannonball. The huge impact not only blew away most of the soldiers, but also Zhang. In midair, the damaged suit became the luckiest part of Jeon's final rescue. The moment Hulk landed, another sergeant immediately gave the order to fire. The soldiers, who were once again in a concentrated fire state, were completely attracted to Hulk with hatred, but Riang was still not within the designed range of the stray bullet. A bullet lightly grazed Jeon's damaged armor. When the sonic cannon completely blasted the overheated armor, the lost speed force began to have the most direct contact with the air, although this would make Jaeon's speed power unable to reach it to the maximum effect, but it saved this fool who wanted to die. Thank God I love you. Boom. The frictional electric heat once again activated the speed force inside Riang's body that had been emptied by the explosion, and a new round of lightning surged forward. Jung swore that he would never commit such a stupid thing again. Never. In a basement of apartment number 13, Block F, Doo-Doo Street. Boom. Lightning was speeding, and the tail flame of the electric arc was swept by a strong wind with the return of the owner here, and disappeared after a moment. Messy. Jung's mind began to feel dissatisfied with the fact that the laboratory was not tidied up before leaving. But only after a moment. Shoo. Just like a tornado passing through, everything in the laboratory was changed in an instant. After it was absolutely neat and tidy, even Virgo could find no faults. Riang finally leaned down from the sofa, and the damaged suit had been thrown away. In the place where it belongs, at least in the short term, Jaeon has no intention of wearing this unreasonable thing again. In fact, after the electrical resistance suit perfectly demonstrated its actual capabilities, other drawbacks in various aspects have also appeared. There is never anything in the world that can perfectly solve all crisis situations, so Riang only I can do my best to perfect and improve it. Real-time monitoring is online and we are here to serve you wholeheartedly. Uninvited, with the return of Jaeon's suit, the laboratory's power was fully charged, the light and intelligence returned, and with the disappearance of the shielding effect, Jaeon finally felt that he was no longer alone, although this time the little thing is very weak, but at least it can chat with Jaeon. What do you think the suit can be improved on? The topic is beyond the scope, comes from the poor real-time monitoring of the answers. It is obvious that this little thing has never been a humanized intelligent program. It only stays at the level of basic weak artificial intelligence, but even so, it is already the world's the most advanced smart terminal on the market. Then to put it another way, how much room for improvement does the various practical parameters of the suit have? Riang leaned on the nest of the old sofa and slumped like a motionless dead dog. His dead fish eyes and dead face all showed this. The guy doesn't want to move at the moment. And this time the answer from real-time monitoring has not changed. The topic is beyond the scope and cannot be answered. Tisk. Sometimes I really want to donate you to the school, you know. Riang looked at the useless little thing projected in front of his eyes. The man covering his face felt defeated and regretted inventing it, and looked at it again. With the damaged suit and exhausted experimental materials, Jean realized that if he wanted to continue to make subsequent improvements, he would have no money. Money is always an annoying topic. Sometimes you think it is material, but when you don't have it, you want it like your own son. Can I donate you in exchange for money? No. This time, the real-time monitoring gave its answer, and at the same time, a neatly listed ranking of North American universities flashed across the screen. Obviously, at the request of his master, the real-time monitoring did not realize that he was going to be donated. The stupid artificial intelligence also gave a complete list of donation channels and possible feedback, but this just happened to Jaeon. This duplicitous guy has an army. ZZ. He jumped into the hole he dug himself. There was nothing to talk about today. His IQ was crushed by the robot he made. He just raised his head and said nothing, looking at the ceiling in the laboratory that was still black under the light. Here is 3 floors underground. Except for a sea view curtain that can be changed at any time, there is no natural atmosphere here. When it is quiet enough, people living here can no longer feel any life except depression. It can be said that this is the bottom of society. It's time to think about sources of income. Riang silently rubbed the side of his head. A penny would stump a heroic man. It's best to do less of things like robbing banks that are sure to make headlines. Doing too many illegal things is a sure thing. He is addicted and runs from New York to Boston to escape the sanctions of the New York police. According to the cheating laws of the United States, as long as the influence of the case has not spread to the federal level, then there are different laws and regulations in different state-level administrative regions. Perhaps a fugitive who committed a crime on the West Coast deserves to be punished because of the influence of the incident he committed. The sanctions were not severe enough, and he was able to escape the law by fleeing to the East Coast. Using the different laws between states as a loophole has become a secondary reason for many fugitives to reduce the cost of crime and return to their old ways endlessly. To be honest, for Gene, this kind of hiding life is not enough. Many times, sometimes he himself wonders whether humans evolved from orangutans or mice. Tisk, a silent murmur. As if Riang's muttering stopped, there was no other sound in the laboratory except for the sound of dripping water and the sound of the real-time monitoring host running. Step, step. I don't know how long it took, maybe it was just a short moment, or maybe several hours had passed. At least before Riang was awakened by the explosion of the speed force in his body, he was awakened by another series of continuous crisp sounds from the outside world. Footsteps. Will there be other people coming here? Maybe there will be. There are very few residents on the 3 underground floors, but nothing can be absolute. There will always be new entrants who will climb up from the bottom of society and find their way into a truly glorious society, surface channels. Or maybe some other mad scientists or criminals rented this place and became Hajian's neighbors. In short, follow the safety rules for nightlife in North America. Do not walk at night, do not open the door at night, and do not give your neighbors the impression that your home can be entered and exited at will. Anyway, Jaeon was woken up. Tread, tread. The sound is still ringing, and it is coming towards Zhang's laboratory. Zhang is the last one in the corridor, and there is no corner at the end of the corridor, which means that the other party is coming towards you. Shu, the keen speedster, came to the door and looked outside through the peephole. His vigilance prevented Riang from making fatal mistakes in the general direction. But it was obvious that this strange visitor had actually entered the room before he was aware of anyone's arrival. Hey, why don't you invite the guests to order something? The voice came from behind him, on the sofa where a one-eyed black man wearing a windbreaker was holding the water glass that Jean had brought after returning to the laboratory, and drank the glass of water in a nonchalant but unhygienic gesture. All. Tisk 82-year-old mineral water. To be honest, if Nick Fury insists on talking about it, he is equally proficient in the unique black sense of humor. However, uninvited strangers with a fearless attitude or an unfriendly message to the owner no matter what. Tread, tread. The footsteps outside the laboratory were still crisp, but it was obvious that when Jean noticed a certain button device in Nick Fury's hand, he already understood that he had been tricked. Chapter 71. The mineral water was still swirling in Nick Fury's throat and between his lips and tongue, as if he was juggling. Nick Fury didn't care at all whether Jung would sneak up on him at this time. Just because he took out a gun from his trench coat. For a secretive agent, Nick Fury could fit more than one handful in his big trench coat, but at least the point he wanted to express was achieved. I can shoot you in the head before you wake up. Therefore, before Nick Fury spoke first to express his intention, Jung had not chased the people away. So far, the real-time monitoring of the location has not come back online or given a warning due to Nick Fury's arrival, which means that the other party must have something in his hands. Holding an intervention system that is more advanced than real-time monitoring. Jaeon was very cautious. He did not strike preemptively before the uninvited guest expressed his intention. Instead, he waited quietly. The speed force that could explode at any time gave Jaeon the confidence to escape. But if Riang knew that there was a stepping trap placed right at the door of the room where he thought he was safe, I don't know what this guy would think. You held it back, okay. Your profile shows that you are irritable but don't have antisocial tendencies. I thought you would come over immediately. Nick Fury made an exaggerated gesture, but the button in his hand never released. This made Jean feel quite cautious. What are you holding in your hand? It's a small toy, do you want to try it? Nick Fury pushed his hand forward. The agent leader's psychology and situation control ability were already very good. For the old agent, playing with a stupid lightning man was at least a front-on job. It won't be too difficult if you are prepared. What you are saying sounds familiar to me. Who are you and why are you here? Otherwise I will call the police. Jaeon did not use the speed force immediately. Nick Fury must have something to rely on if he is confident. Jaeon always felt that this guy's attitude seemed to be where he was seen. Hey, call the police. Even if you call the Federal Bureau of Investigation, you can't take me away. Do you believe it or not? It means you have a great background. Jaeon began to move gently towards the direction of the suit. It seemed irrelevant, but it was the closest distance to a corridor that Jaein deliberately cleared for himself in the laboratory. A straight path to contact his own suit. With a burst speed of 1800, it may not take more than an instant for Nick Fury to reach that position. It seems that Coulson didn't leave the deepest impression on you. I thought you would try the power of this little toy this time, but it didn't happen. Nick Fury looked full of disappointment, but in fact he had already told himself most of the identities. S.H.I.E.L.D., you belong to them. Strictly speaking, it belongs to my humble servant Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury finally stood up from the sofa, shook his windbreaker, and the formal conversation began with a relatively harmonious ending. Tisk, the experimental environment is terrible. For a researcher, your place here is quite shabby. That's because someone told me your purpose, otherwise you will be dead. Jung looked fierce. This time he no longer tried to contact Nick Fury's body head-on, nor did he intend to try the little thing in his hand. What exactly is the thing? From a researcher's perspective, state agents always have a mysterious sense of visibility. One-sided information asymmetry has led many people to believe that agents are comprehensive and extremely powerful. But in fact, no one can accomplish anything without preparation. What an agent can do is just more than everyone is prepared for. Your confidence comes from Kacha. Just when Nick Fury was about to provoke further, a flash of time passed by, and Jean had already completed the back and forth action in an instant and completed the entire process of taking away the gun that Nick Fury placed on the table. With your gun, you will be shot in the head by me to show your purpose. I will leave you a whole body. You can't get out of this room today. Jung has already put his hand on the trigger, and the muzzle of the gun is also facing aimed at Nick Fury's head. But on the contrary, Nick Fury looked very casual and looked like he was looking at a fool. You pull the trigger and try the high-tech weapon with the fingerprint verification system. In fact, it would be better if you just rush over and punch me. Slap. Nick Fury casually threw the button in his hand, and then Riang was tricked again. You said it was a little toy. But I didn't say I wasn't lying to you, right? You need to change your personality. If you are irritable, excessive secretion of cresol ammonia oxidase will suppress the rationality of your right brain and strengthen the behavioral awareness of your left brain. Too extreme. That's enough, shut up. Jaein couldn't bear this fool's continued chatter. Nick Fury neither stated his intention nor showed any confidence that could give him confidence, so what was Jaein still afraid of? Boom, lightning broke out, and Jaeon's shaking hands thrust directly into Nick Fury's chest. Sometimes you should never underestimate the preparation an agent makes to deal with a situation. Cha. After Nick Fury finished pronouncing the first syllable of the radical word, he suddenly felt something hit his chest. But what followed was not that Nick Fury was stabbed through the heart by Jaeon. Vibranium lining. I wear this thing every day. It's outer space metal that can block nuclear bombs head-on. If you can achieve cell shock control at a level close to absolute zero, you should be able to penetrate it. Looking at Jung, who had returned to his original position but was actually cursing his mother in his heart, Nick Fury felt that this stupid young man had stepped into his trap step by step. The purpose of his trip was not to humiliate this unlucky man. Guy. Jaeon's ability makes Nick Fury very envious, but the inextricable conflict between him and Tony Stark is also a trouble. Therefore, Nick Fury needs to make a choice. When Tony Stark cannot be reused, Jung will Kanang become his second choice. So, his purpose was just to come and take a look. Get out of my house. Jaeon's fingers were bleeding, but the rapid healing driven by the speed force quickly healed the wound. It can be said that this ability made Nick Fury's eyes shine. Why don't you aim for my head? Go away. This time, Jaeon was no longer fooled. He decisively returned to his experimental stand. The battle suit was the source of Jaeon's greatest sense of security. So, did Jaeon make the right choice this time? That depends on how much preparation Nick Fury made while the guy was asleep. What do you think about killing Hawkeye in the later stage? What I hate the most is people pointing a gun at my head. What is that new suit of yours? Nick Fury saw a completely different place between Jaeon and before when he put on the suit. You don't have to worry about leaving my house. Jung, whose body was in shock, was already ready to go. In fact, he was not afraid of how many electric fields there were around Nick Fury's body, but these people seemed to be concerned about everything. There are agents who are well prepared, which is really impressive to Riang. It's true, come up and give me a try. The more surprises you get, the more my evaluation of you will rise. I don't feel the slightest honor in your statement, but this is what you said. Don't regret it. After the words fell, Riang moved. Boom, lightning broke out, a sudden attack at very close range, and Jean ran around Nick Fury's body with a golden arc of light, but he did not choose to attack directly at the first time. Phil Coulson would not suffer the loss that Jean would suffer. Do it again for the second time. Shua. Focus throw. Lightning energy was released from Riang's palm, and a thunderbolt struck Nick Fury's body. Zilla. Pa. Jaeon was right to be cautious. Nick Fury's body was also surrounded by an electric field, which was fatal to the damaged suit. Direct contact at close range would cause Jaeon's suit to be hit by leakage current, thus entering a state of paralysis again. You have learned to be smart. Then you don't know me well enough. During the run, Jung was still engaging in a verbal confrontation with Nick, testing each other's trump cards little by little. Jaeon moved steadily while seizing the advantage of his own speed. No matter how rich Nick Fury's background was, he could not escape from this room. Swoosh. 2 rubber chains rose into the air, and the ropes cut from the cooling scraps left behind after the coating of the suit completely bound Nick Fury in an instant at Jaeon's super speed. The insulating properties created an electric field on Nick Fury's body. Leakage current cannot be transmitted into Riang's body to achieve a paralyzing effect. This is the right step to take. Until the moment Nick Fury was instantly shrunk and thrown by forces from all directions, he didn't realize what was happening. Pong. There was a heavy impact sound of the human body hitting the wall, and Nick Fury fell to the ground in a state of confusion. What you just said is so conclusive that I can now beat you to death with your trump card. Riang held the end of the rope in his hand. During this attack, Riang always kept a safe distance from Nicky. Neither gave him a chance to make a comeback nor allowed him to have any delusions. However, even in the face of adversity, Nick Fury remained calm and the smile on his lips looked a little embarrassed, but in fact he was not too traumatized. The half-finished super soldier potion gave Nick Fury a strong physically, such a blow was not enough to hurt him severely. I can still carry it all day, but what about you? Nick Fury had something in his words. Tisk, and Riang was once again irritated by Nick Fury's calmness. What gave them the confidence to remain calm in desperate situations? Why did they still look fearless even when facing death? This temperament is called people want to tear it apart with their own hands. Then go to hell. Jaeon tightened the rope in his hand. This time, the object of his struggle was transferred to Nick Fury's head. The heavily tied rope could crush his head in an instant. Jaeon was already murderous. Boom. The speed force exploded, and the golden lightning took his first step, but his opponent Nick Fury was still sitting on the ground, looking like he was being slaughtered. As the spy chief of S.H.I.E.L.D., will Nick Fury's character make him sit back and wait to be killed? Obviously not. Time up. The moment Nick Fury saw the running lightning, before the touch of the skin on his head sent out an induction reaction, the small button device that had been discarded was activated at the place that Nick Fury had been looking at. Boom. Electromagnetic explosion. C-17. Agent Patton jumped out of the plane leisurely and walked into the apartment that was completely trapped in the death zone of intelligent equipment due to electromagnetic field entanglement. Everything in the explosion range was still intact on the surface. The electromagnetic force exploded. It didn't damage any actual appearance around it. However, all the devices in this apartment that require electricity or can communicate with each other have failed. Electromagnetic interference still exists here. After pushing through the damp corridor and entering the room at the end, as agreed, time is now for the splice. Head, how are you having fun? Agent Barton kicked open the door, and Nick Fury was inside. But what is different from what he imagined is that Nick Fury at this moment is in the same state as the guys around him. They are all unconscious. Under the explosion of electromagnetic force, the speed force was distorted by interference, is stretched directly to infinity. This is a huge load on the human body, even exceeding the electric shock effect of leakage current. Similarly, Nick Fury, who is not far away from Jaeon but is trapped and connected, becomes another person hit by magnetic entanglement. In part, his coma was obviously more serious than that of Jean. Tisk, murmured for a while without meaning. Agent Patton finally chose to carry out the order given by Nick Fury. He reluctantly carried the two people with his weak body. Agent Patton left the apartment with heavy steps. C-17 took off again, and this time it returned with a full load. When Nick Fury woke up from the ward, the first thing the secret agent leader did, rubbing his forehead, was to determine his current location. There was a string of small words, shelled, on the sign on the hospital bed, and it was obvious that he had returned to the headquarters. Woo! Only now did Nick Fury let go of his heavy heart. Even for Nick Fury, it is quite dangerous to face Jaeon directly. Even if S.H.I.E.L.D. has completely mastered everything about Jaeon in terms of information, it can be obtained in 6 months. Lots and lots of messages. After the integration of resources and the estimation and calculation of countless analysts, the abilities and characteristics that Jaeon may have or fully possess have been completely calculated by S.H.I.E.L.D. Even if the source of this guy's ability is still not clear, it may just happen in an explosion. The lucky mutant. But S.H.I.E.L.D. has already left a whole series of almost perfect targeting methods for Jaeon. But it wasn't until he actually faced Jaeon that Nick Fury discovered that he didn't know him well enough. The reason for his victory was not his reserved means but this guy's lack of character. Jaeon's ability to fight alone was to become the source of his numerous failures. It should be noted that every agent is not just one person, there is a whole team behind them. And now, they've caught him. Click. The door to the ward was opened, and Agent Natasha walked in from the door. Barton has gone to Phil's place after he came back. You are awake now. Yes, very awake. There was no trace of fatigue on Nick Fury's face. A dozen seconds ago he was leaning on the hospital bed and fell asleep, but now he looked in high spirits. Rui's adjustment to his own condition has reached an astonishing level. I haven't had such a long sleep in a long time. How about our speedster friend? After waking up, Nick Fury quickly turned his attention to another point. The purpose of his previous trip was to go to Jung. Although there was no intention to arrest him directly at first, it was not until Jaeon turned on real-time surveillance in his home that he thought there would be no security risks. Nick Fury took advantage of the loophole at that time and designed a trap that could be captured. Maybe in the future, Nick Fury still wants to get more information from Jung in a direct confrontation. Although the final result was unsatisfactory, and Jaeon's lack of cooperation caused him a lot of trouble, everything was still being calculated. The jamming device directly caused the real-time monitoring to go offline, and a series of seemingly head-on confrontations were actually just by leaving room for himself. Nick Fury laid the foundation for the final success. Is Jaeon awake? Bringing up this question, it seems that Nick Fury has put the matter about Jaeon at the forefront, and about another thing that Agent Natasha said when entering the ward. Nick Fury has not yet taken it at face value. Those who go up care. He woke up faster than you, but as we expected, he is a restless guy. Fortunately, the metal cage made of vibranium cannot be penetrated by him. Now he has been kept in the cage for research. Department passed. Then it's best to stop. We need more than just an experiment. Do you have surveillance video? Yes, I know you will definitely need this. With that said, Natasha took out the computer behind her back. This poisonous rose-like lady seemed to know Nick Fury to an outrageous level. Thank you. Nick Fury didn't say much. He just got off the hospital bed and walked towards the prison where Jaeon was placed while paying attention to the surveillance screen. Wang. The speed force is still sounding, and it's past midnight at this time. Jaeon had already passed the explosive stage of the speed force. Jaeon was forced to wake up from his coma under the expansion of the speed force in his body. But until he saw that he was in a prison, Jean's first reaction was to get out of here. The bars between the cages were more than 15 centimeters apart, which made this cell look very simple. It seemed that as long as a light touch can break it. However, Riang did this, but he did not achieve the expected effect he wanted. The vibranium cage was still impenetrable even under the soaring speed force. These metal railings that could not be shaken at all absorbed all the vibration energy emitted by Riang, and stood absolutely still in front of him as if unshakable. After countless attempts, even throwing lightning was still of no avail. Jung found himself locked in a cage that belonged only to him. And the culprit of all this has still not shown up so far. Riang sat cross-legged on the ground. The swelling of the speed force in his body made him particularly uncomfortable. However, Thanks to the excessive consumption of the Speed Force yesterday, today's Speed Force was still within a tolerable range. The constantly shaking body was expelling a large amount of energy. Free electrical energy. Jean's timeline is currently countless times faster than that of everyone in the world, but this is also because such a short 2 hours is almost several days of waiting for Jean, and his patience is endless here. Consumed in silence. Tap 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 tap. Until there was a burst of footsteps in the corridor, one could easily tell from the voices that there were two people, maybe a man and a woman, or maybe two men, one fat and one thin. In short, Riang was being attracted by everyone except himself. The second being was interested. He stood up from the ground and saw the face slowly coming into view at the end of the corridor. Nick Fury is another guy's name that impressed Jaeon deeply, and now he is finally here. You're recovering well. I came over to see how you're doing here. I heard that there was quite a stir last night. Nick Fury was referring to the sudden state of heat caused by the explosion of the Speed Force last night. This was being monitored. What is reflected as identified by many psychoanalysts and researchers as a state of breaking out after waking up and wanting to leave here. It is worth mentioning that the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. did not take off Jaeon's suit. Before Jaeon's superpowers were not fully understood, no one could guarantee whether this would wake him up. If it was done in a cage, if so, it means that the other party will have the possibility of leaving. Imprisoned and set to a confidentiality level above A, Nick Fury hurriedly arrived after waking up. Where is this? Jaeon grabbed the railings on the cage. Having been in contact with the cage many times, Jaeon already knew that there was absolutely no current on the railings. These special metals that could absorb almost all energy also completely isolated the outside world. Safeguard. It serves no purpose other than imprisonment. I thought you would continue to question my purpose. Then what's your purpose? Jung hated to see Nick Fury's expression like this, especially when he kept a safe distance of more than one arm from himself. That distance ensured that even his super speed could not cross it. Nick Fury Rui's cautious attitude makes him have no inhibitions. Suo. Nick Fury did not answer directly. Instead, he casually opened two other documents on the computer in his hand and placed them in front of Jaeon. See this. That was the scene where Jaeon hung up the Speed Force Cyclone in front of the bank and snatched the banknotes, which made headlines in New York, but Nick Fury has all the surveillance videos from that time. What do you want to express? It seems that you haven't understood what I mean. Let me give you a little hint. Debit card your money. Nick Fury has made it very clear. Before initiating cooperation with a person, the first thing Nick Fury needs to judge is not the other person, ability, but credibility. He needs to know Jaeon's choice of position, rather than a test of his character, so this unidentified fund will be his breakthrough. In fact, from the moment Jaeon withdrew the money, Nick Fury discovered that the clues to the corresponding savings card were broken. The entire clue network was completely broken. Such a suspicious source made everyone suspicious. Nick Fury needs to know what he's up against. And what role did Jaeon play in this? You can think it through and give me the answer. When faced with Nick Fury's questions, Jaeon remained motionless in a cross-legged posture, and even gave up standing up. It was obvious that Jaeon knew nothing about the origin of the debit card, although he could directly describe the other party's code name. But nothing can be found out by just relying on a name, and the most important thing is that Jaeon simply refuses to exchange information with Nick Fury. He hates this group of agents. Go away, don't give me a chance to leave. Jung responded indifferently, and there was no answer from anyone in this solid cage. Let's go and call the research team back. We can cross it off the list. The Avengers don't need to absorb people like this. Nick Fury returned the computer to Agent Natasha and walked to his room. After they left the prison, a team of appointed research teams would enter work. News about Nick Fury's capture of the Lightning Man spread like wildfire. There are endless people in this world who peak at power. Although Nick Fury hopes to utilize Jaeon's greater value, if the other party does not cooperate, he will also not hesitate to show his coldest spy side. Such a shrewd and indifferent spy chief still buries himself deeply. His secrets are unknown, and his long-term plan to catch big fish is still in progress, but in fact, Nick Fury may have also overlooked a small problem. Darkness under the lamp is sometimes the most confusing place. He was caught and put in jail. Nick Fury moves very quickly, but our news channels are also slow. Is this guy worth absorbing? Alexander Pills held up his fat belly while processing documents and sipping champagne, enjoying a leisurely office life. It looks unique. But if the background is replaced by the Secret Service, everything will become frightening. My judgment on whether it is worth it or not is only a matter of opinion, but he does have value that can be recruited by us. Do we need to fish him out? John Garrett replied, sitting in the deputy seat of Alexander Pierce. Although their relationship is they are superiors and subordinates, but there is no essential difference between the two in terms of behavior. Hydra is patient and ready to go, but it is not like a tight iron plate internally. John Garrett has his own ambitions, but so does Alexander Pierce. While they are fighting each other, they are working hard in the same trench. At least all Hydra are aligned in their ultimate goal of overthrowing S.H.I.E.L.D. No one can snatch anything from Nick Fury's hands. Alexander Pierce took a sip of champagne and made an analogy, indicating that it would be difficult to fish out Jayon and that the protection of the prison was not as easy as imagined. But no one can take something out of a dead man's mouth. I mean, fish it out. Well, it's an operation worth trying, but be careful not to get yourself into trouble. Alexander Pierce pondered for a moment and said again, I will use the name of Wuchang to test pressure on Nick Fury, but you only have one chance, you have to grab it before he is killed. Before sending to the laboratory. Understood. Then, John Garrett turned and left the office. The other side. For Zhang, who is locked up in prison, although he does not know that he has attracted the attention of countless people, Zhang is also doing his own things. Don't underestimate a person in prison. If you slow down the surveillance screen dozens of times, you will find out what Riang is doing at this moment. Thanks to the fact that the speed force that has not been completely consumed is still stored in Riang's body, a large amount of speed can push Riang to burst out faster in a short period of time, or make faster reaction actions in a small area. The body that was constantly shaking appeared blurry. Jayon's body movements have already caused the shadow of flowers to appear on the S.H.I.E.L.D. surveillance screen on the other side, and this is only the first step of Jayon's small actions. He is creating opportunities for his escape. With the help of super speed, Jayon's time flow rate reached 100 times that of ordinary people. At the same time, the comparison with the time consumed was the same when observed under relatively static conditions. The environment around the prison looked unchanged. But with every turn of the camera, Jung could see the inspection team outside the prison and the snipers lurking in every corner. The instructions given by Nick Fury before leaving were heard by Jean, and he turned around and called the research team to stand by. In other words, S.H.I.E.L.D. has no intention of giving up the idea of conducting research on Jayon, so what will they do? Nick Fury wants a living Jayon, so how can he get him out? Anesthesia. Riang was quietly waiting for the sniper's shot, waiting for the anesthetic to enter his body. At that time, the researchers would enter the prison and take him unconscious into the research institute, and that would be his chance. However, with the technical level of S.H.I.E.L.D., it is completely possible to achieve the effect of indoor anesthetic spray, but they chose to use sniping. Including Jung himself, he couldn't understand why this was happening. Maybe it was a lack of funds, or Nick Fury's brain was caught in the door. In short, no one could figure out the secret agent leader's thoughts. Maybe he himself was expecting heat. Aang is looking for a chance to leave. Time passed slowly while waiting quietly, just like an eagle waiting. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s caution makes them choose the most appropriate shot to minimize the accident rate while ensuring the completion rate of the mission. Jung must sell his own flaws and wait for the other party to take the bait, and this will be a battle with the timing of the intrigue among the agents. Time is gradually passing by while waiting, but with passionate eyes, you can see that the dark needle tip protruding from the corner is still standing. It is a sniper's point. The opponent still maintains the highest standby state, but the peripheral research scholars are beginning to feel sleepy. Riang yawned, and his original upright sitting posture also changed its position. Pong. At the same time, the anesthetic injection released after passing through the silencer and buffer belt comes out of the chamber. An injection was inserted into Riang's neck at the next moment, and a drug with a concentration 17 times higher than that of a normal anesthetic injection instantly entered Riang's body. Taken the bait, Riang thought silently as he fell to the ground. The speed force accelerates and vibrates the body cells, and the anesthetic agent that enters Riang's body is excreted out of the body through the pores at the same time. But what was seen on the surveillance screen was Riang's coma. Operation Study Group. In the command room, the mission commander gave the order and the prison was opened. Control room outside the prison. Now we take over this place. John Garrett entered the control room with Alexander Pierce's souvenir. The time coincided with the moment when Jean was hit by a sniper shot and he opened the door. The next moment was the commander's order, although John Garrett was slower. One step, but Century Mountain gave him the right to speak in the entire room. With direct authorization from the 5 permanent members, this place has been taken over by the Operations Department. All research data have been sealed, and personnel have been confidentially registered as research subjects. We are going to take him away. John Garrett's tough style took over the control position, and at the same time replaced the original commander. The unlucky agent seemed to be just an executor pushed out by Nick Fury. Whether it was the appointment certificate or the agent level, Garrett was whispered. The former was only a 4th-level agent, while John Garrett was a 5th-level agent. At the same time, after declaring control of the scene in a high-profile manner, John Garrett simultaneously waved back to signal his subordinate agents to start taking action. There was also another injection stored in the box where the appointment letter was placed. Unlike the anesthetic, this injection it's a highly toxic test tube. John Garrett wants to silence Jean and completely drown Jean, who knows the secret of the existence of the Sky Eye. With the order of Alexander Pierce, the final trouble will be directed to Pierce's side by John Garrett, and he can only be regarded as an intermediate executor at best. Everything is planned, and a trace of it can't help but appear on the corner of John Garrett's mouth. Smile. But if he didn't see the next scene in the surveillance. Click. As the prison door was opened, the researchers finally entered the prison after using a thermal imaging device to remotely confirm that Jean's body temperature had entered the state of a comatose human body. There are 4 people, and behind them is a 5th researcher who holds another injection in his hand. In order to ensure that the research subject is completely comatose, he will give additional injections when the other person shows signs of waking up. But this time the person who sneaked into the team was not Nick Fury's direct line, but a chess piece sent by John Garrett. Gotcha. The injection is already in place, and the tube of medicine will be pushed into his body as long as he shows any sign of movement. However, the reality was not as smooth as they expected. Boom. When the researchers entered the prison, Riang, who was unconscious on the ground, suddenly burst into flames. A bolt of lightning passed through everyone and rushed out of the prison door. Riang did not even stop beside anyone, and moved the fastest distance in a straight line. Rushed to the door. Under such stress measures, as the shield monitoring intelligence made actual judgments on the prisoners and took response measures, the prison was closed the next moment. The closing action is still 1 step slower than the electric one, and the mechanical transmission is always 1 step slower than the electric one. In the suit, Jean is extremely cautious while maintaining the state of action. He has suffered enough losses from the agents, and now he just wants to leave this place, and then take revenge. Pong. The prison door is closed, and Jung has arrived outside the prison. Didu, 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 didu. The alarm sounded instantly throughout the entire warning area, but for a speedster who escaped from the cage, the last shackles had disappeared. You should regret not putting handcuffs on me, Jung said with a cruel smile, even though his eyes were filled with agents who rushed to the scene, and as the soldiers entered, the subsequent security metal gate was completely closed. But so what? Boom. An instant. Before the soldiers were in position and pulled the trigger, even before most of the agents were ready for battle, Jung was already on the move. Lightning swept in all directions and blood swept across the ground. Swish, 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 swish. The golden arc is like a light knife dividing the human body, and the person who died cannot even feel that he has been divided into 2 moments before death. Riang achieves the same frequency as the air by vibrating his body, and incomplete separation after penetration is achieved. Puff 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 puff. The fierceness in Shira field vents in anger, and the unbridled speedster is unstoppable. Gudong. John Garrett in the main control room was proud of having mastered the initiative one moment, but the next moment Jen's complete comeback gave him a huge shock. Everything shown in the monitoring screen was more than 1 second later than reality. More than a minute had passed until Riang completed the entire killing process and exposed himself to the surveillance footage. The metal door is almost undefended to Jaeon's penetrating power. Even the distance between the upper and lower floors can be traversed by shock. All SHIELD agents are within Jaeon's attack targets, and they are arrogantly retaliating. The agents launched a bloody counterattack against the entire agent block. Alert, 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 alert. New York. On the way to the Stark Group, agents Nick Fury and Natasha received an attack warning from the headquarters, but at this time they were no longer in the SHIELD headquarters. He escaped. It's just as you expected, but what next? Natasha lifted her long hair and looked at the director beside her. Every step Nick Fury made seemed to be full of loopholes, but at the same time, it was perfect. Hits every key point. Some people can't help it when he makes trouble. People who are more impatient than us will lead us to find their tails and pull out the carrots and bring them out of the mud. There is no such thing as no clue in the world. This lightning will be our breakthrough. Nick Fury looked indifferent, but in fact what he described was not as easy as he imagined. Will he come back again? Agent Natasha saw the steering wheel that was wet from Nick Fury's sweaty palms. Yes, that's why we need Tony Stark. After saying that, Nick Fury turned off the warning lights and continued driving forward, as if this had never happened. Unlike Nick Fury, who was watching calmly, there was turmoil and chaos within SHIELD at this time. While escaping from the prison, Jaeon also opened the doors of all the prisons. Countless criminals and people with superpowers who had been imprisoned here were released, and a greater chaos began to spread around. Jaeon did not get the help of the villains. Support, like a passerby passed by lightning, Jaeon always has his own purpose. Inside the prison control room. Boom. The image on the surveillance camera just flashed by, and Jang had already appeared in the room. Faced with dozens of civilian agents holding firearms but shaking hands, Jang was undoubtedly a nightmare. Where is Nick Fury? Jung roared. At the same time, lightning roared past, and Riang grabbed the neck of the agent closest to him who was trying to launch a sneak attack from behind. Click. Broken. Using one life to make more people see the reality clearly, no matter what these people do, no one can stop him. Zhang, who is always moving at maximum speed, even creates an afterimage of himself, which makes him see it's like being in two different places at the same time. But in fact, this is still a person, not a remnant of time. When someone is sneaking around and preparing to make a phone call, lightning penetrates, and his life will end here. I never want to be a bad person, but you guys piss me off when real criminals don't get the punishment they deserve. Even though he was extremely angry, he still maintained considerable sanity. He understood that when he did these things, it meant that he was cut off from his past life. From today on, he will no longer be just a rat hiding in the sewer. He will be on the list of criminals throughout the United States. As a super criminal, Manhattan, New York, 10,880 Malibu Street, Tony Stark's private residence. The 210th accelerated test begins. With the reactor in the basement once again powered on, Tony Stark's suit transformation plan has entered the next stage. Speed and resistance are the main themes of Tony Stark's suit transformation these days. He forgot to eat, forgot to sleep or pay attention to the crisis in Stark Enterprises. He devoted himself wholeheartedly to accelerating the transformation of the suit, but because of the blow he received from Jaeon, Tonista's face was shamed. He could not tolerate being stepped on, even after knowing why Jaeon died. After the whole process of change, Tony Stark felt guilty, but this did not prevent him from regaining his place. I will crush your head with the iron fist of the mecha and then apologize. Tony Stark looked at the newly hung photos in the laboratory, which were the newspapers that had been used to record the New York blackout 6 months ago. Although the media described it in a few words, Tony Stark was deeply moved. Knowing the inside story is the huge consequence of his own research. The government paid for him, but the victims did not receive the compensation they deserved. Perhaps Jaeon was right and those who deserved to be punished were still free. Tony Stark was condemned by his conscience, but more importantly he wants to regain his place. I hate guys who are more arrogant than me. This is Nini's little pride, and in the process of transforming arcs and sparks, Tony Stark will use his own anger to push this conscience towards success little by little. Mark 7 Armor. Anti-Lightning Man Type 1. ZZZZ. The arc welding fireworks filled the entire laboratory with thick smoke. It seemed that the ventilation ducts inside were no longer sufficient. Snort. Water jets were released from the nozzles on the ceiling to cool down Tony Stark's body. The finished suit did not experience any water spray, but at this time Tony Stark no longer had time to care about so much. He was almost exhausted. Jarvis, use computers instead of manpower during the actual testing phase. Get me Ronaldinho's call. I need to go through the back door. Okay, sir. Loyal eyes serve the Stark family diligently online, while flashing lights back and forth. The communication part will use analog tones instead of artificial tones for calls. Sir, there is an external message that needs your review. I said don't let anyone disturb me when I'm experimenting. Okay, I need to rest now, but don't disturb my sleep at this time. Tony Stark slapped him away. The robot controlled by Jarvis hung up the phone. But even so, the display light on the communication machine still did not stop flashing. Why not execute the hang-up command? I can't do it, sir. The other party has invaded my security system, and now the whole villa has been captured, sir. Jarvis's unchanged tone brought bad news to Tony Stark. Tony Stark did not listen to what Jarvis had yet to say. The playboy, who was overwhelmed with a sense of crisis, subconsciously summoned his own armor that was still under research. Mark 7 inches. Tony Stark activated the protective function of the armor and lightly pressed the button in his hand. Click, 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 click. With a burst of metal collision, Tony Stark's feet stepped on the double ring structure in the center of the laboratory. Then a ring background wall rose and pushed the anti-flash man Type 1 into the air and quickly approached Tony Stark. Body fits it. Boom. The thermal propulsion system is activated. The entire armor is made of super-fast alloy steel, which can withstand environmental pressures at 15 times the speed of sound. The internal near semi-liquid non-Newtonian fluid buffer zone perfectly protects the safety of the main operator. This is a set of armor specially developed for the absolute speed of the Lightning Man. Although the functions are not yet comprehensive, at least in terms of speed alone, Tony Stark can already achieve an impact of 3 times the speed of sound head-on. Just the armor itself. In other words, regardless of the driver's physical fitness, this suit of armor is fully capable of fighting against the fierce opponent from a week ago. Turning into a silver lightning, Tony Stark, who was wearing armor, had already rushed out of the laboratory before Jarvis finished the second half of the prompt. He wanted to see who had broken into his home. Maybe it's just right to try out the capabilities of this armor. Mr. Target Danger Level 0. After that, Jarvis's voice slowly sounded, but Tony Stark was no longer here, and the electronic light screen displayed by Jarvis was the Aegis that saved Tony Stark a week ago. Nick Fury. Raise your hands and squat down to hold your head. Boom. Tony Stark's arrogant voice resounded in every corner of the villa. In fact, it only took less than half a second to rush out of the laboratory and enter the periphery of the villa. Under the operation of the supercomputer, even if Tony Stark's own reaction speed cannot keep up with the speed of the suit, he can still do what he wants to do. The armor stopped in front of the villa door, and on the raised mechanical arms, the flashing palm cannons were already in place. Through the monitoring screen, Tony Stark didn't see clearly the enemy in front of him until half a second had passed since he was in place. Guessed. 1 man and 1 woman. Agents Nick Fury and Natasha looked at each other and nodded in understanding, and they stood together in front of Tony Stark. You are not welcome here. Tony Stark put down his palm cannon, but he also didn't like uninvited guests, especially when the other party was a national agent who had monitored him. As you might expect, he's really starting to develop the armor. Yes, this guy's personality is exactly the same as his father's. We need his help this time, but I especially hate his father's personality, and he happened to inherit this. Nick Fury nodded, as if he didn't take Tony Stark to heart. He said this in front of the other person and looked careless at the same time, which was quite irritating. I told you to leave and I won't help anyone, even if you know my father. Tony Stark was obviously irritated, especially when the other party mentioned his father twice. It seemed that Braised Eggman didn't seem to be talking to Howard. Stark is a man of the same era, but Tony Stark may think that this is the other party's entrustment. But in the end, Tony Stark did not use force to issue an eviction order. Although the other party was not welcome, at least Tony Stark saw what they brought. The injection will allow me not to worry about your fault for coming uninvited, and the 2 will offset the fact that you hacked my smart program. But, The door is over there. Turn left at the exit and leave the Stark house. It is now closed. Tony Stark expresses his thoughts in his unique way of speaking, which shows that his crisis intentions are gradually reducing, and at the same time he is trying to find ways to regain his own initiative. This shows that he gave in. Yeah, that's a good start, Nick Fury said to Natasha. Let's get down to business. We need your help to deal with someone. It sounds like asking me to run errands. Can you afford the price? 2 injections, and a plan. You were once a reserve inside. In addition, I am from S.H.I.E.L.D. Now S.H.I.E.L.D.'s top secret has been unlocked for you. You can use your artificial intelligence to retrieve information. Nick Fury got right to the point. In a serious environment, it is obvious that seizing the time is the most important thing. In Nick Fury's plan, speed and time are the 2 most crucial links. The tough name of the Homeland Security Strategic Resources Defense and Logistics Agency, Tony Stark read the message and was wary of the 2 agents at the same time. He did not believe either of them. It started in 1945 after World War II. It was established by the 5 permanent members in order to deal with the hidden Nazi elements around the world. Seeing this, Tony Stark's eyes froze. Keep reading. Howard Stark is my father. Yes, Howard Stark, we used to work together, and I deeply regret his misfortune, but now S.H.I.E.L.D. needs you to intervene in the situation where you are Howard's son. The request for a name change for the organization has been approved now. We are called S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, do you think I will believe it? Tony Stark curled his lips. Although he believed that this was true, he still refused to admit that he had lost the right to speak, and the news from the past could not be. It became the payment for Tony Stark to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. for free. Then why don't you put it another way? I need you to help us deal with our common enemy. Nick Fury tactfully submitted the plan to Tony Stark. He did not mention the plan he mentioned when entering the villa again, but look, even this detail was ignored by Playboy. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, a cliché. But this does not mean that we have the most professional agents, but we need your wisdom. Nick Fury looked at Natasha and said. Tisk, obviously, Tony Stark understood what this guy wanted to express. Even a super behemoth like the Stark Group still let the other party sneak in, if this woman hadn't been exposed herself. But you can't afford my salary. How about I be your consultant for $5 million at a time? Tony Stark sat on the ground and started asking for words. He seemed insincere, but in fact he was already flipping through the plan in his hand. I believe you have seen that time is money. S.H.I.E.L.D. needs someone to solve the current troubles, and you need an unblocked channel for cooperation. Nick Fury moved his fingers back and forth in front of Tony Stark's eyes, without mentioning the word employment or consultant. He was just describing the feasibility of the plan. It is conceivable that in a tight time, those who left the prison with the Lightning Man might already be on his way here. How long does it take to get from New York's Trident building to Manhattan? Is it 1800 seconds or 10 seconds to travel 20 kilometers per hour? You put your hope in my new suit, aren't you worried that I will fail? When he saw the end of the plan, Nick Fury shared what he had foreseen, including the moment when he and Black Widow arrived at Tony Towers. The matter of escaping from prison while conquering the private residence was completely written in the plan. And this also made Tony Stark understand one thing: he couldn't refuse. Nick Fury is right, Jaeon is their common opponent, and time is money. Regardless of whether he agrees or refuses, now Jaeon is on his way here. All Nick Fury needs to do is to stay here and not leave. Nothing more. This is almost one more reason for Tony Stark to hate S.H.I.E.L.D., but he may not have a choice now. All your smart systems have been offline. Don't rely too much on your own technology. The unbreakable smart system has been broken by us. Nick Fury pulled out a button-sized jammer from his watch and threw it at Tony Stark's hand. It's like delivering a certificate of nomination. This sincerity is not enough. Tony Stark's face was gloomy. He felt that he was being calculated by others, and this was when he had no choice. The Playboy suddenly had a willfulness to give up the job, but at the same time, he cannot do so. Because that guy can kill people. You have to wipe your ass for the trouble you caused, and the bad guys eventually need to go to jail. You have to atone for your sins, and so does he. Nick Fury's words went straight to Tony Stark's heart. And then, ding dong, Jarvis is back online. Deal, Tony Stark said angrily. At the same time, S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters Trident building. With countless super criminals once imprisoned by S.H.I.E.L.D. escaping, losing the leadership of the Supreme Leader, and at the same time, under the indulgence of some well-intentioned Hydra, S.H.I.E.L.D. has become a mess at this moment. Some Hydras, headed by Alexander Pierce, are committed to using Jung's hand to make things bigger again and release the Hydras who are imprisoned in the deepest parts of S.H.I.E.L.D., but there is also S.H.I.E.L.D., headed by Agent Hilmaria. Bureau diehards still stick to their posts. Where is Nick Fury? Jaeon massacred everyone in the terminal control room of the prison. The bloody massacre frightened every civil servant. After all, someone took the lead in shooting and chose to fight back, but it still didn't help. Shoo! Lightning penetrated, and in just a split second, all those who fired their guns died violently. Except for John Garrett, who was safe and sound and chose to give up resistance, there were only a few lucky ones who were dying. You answer my question. Jaeon pointed a gun at John Garrett's head. Apparently not all S.H.I.E.L.D. weapons have fingerprint recognition capabilities. However, Riang seems to have overestimated the resistance of the guy in front of him. Without waiting for Jung to threaten, John Garrett decisively reported all the news he knew. Nick Fury left S.H.I.E.L.D. and his destination is Manhattan 10,880. I only know this much. Let me go. I have betrayed them. Don't kill me. John Garrett has never begged others for forgiveness like he is now, but he doesn't want to die yet. As an ambitious man, being able to bend and stretch is the most basic thing. John Garrett has his own plans when he assesses the situation, and more importantly, he knows that Jean is not a murderer. It's funny, isn't it? A butcher with human lives on his hands is not a murderer, and S.H.I.E.L.D. also defines his character as not having an obvious antisocial personality. Sometimes a person's good and evil are often vaguely defined, and for S.H.I.E.L.D., Jaeon is such a person. Boom! A bolt of lightning flashed across John Garrett's eyes. When the cold wind blew away his bangs, John Garrett found that his back was completely soaked. He was so close to death, facing a moody person who could kill him at any time. Murderer, John Garrett survives. Call. He took a breath, and the handle of the gun in his hand was also soaked with sweat. John Garrett closed his eyes slightly and sat on his knees on the floor. Bang, bang, 1 shot, 2 shots. John Garrett confirmed the signs of life of every living agent and killed them. As he said, he has betrayed S.H.I.E.L.D., but the other half of the sentence is that he has never been loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. The video and surveillance will be dealt with later. Now, John Garrett can only wait silently. How does this happen? From the moment Jaeon escaped from the prison, everything was no longer under Hydra's control. 12 o'clock noon. At this time, the streets of Manhattan are still crowded. When it is time to get off work, people want to get home faster instead of wasting time in the Enterprise. But soon, everything here will cease to exist. Peaceful daily life will always be interrupted by noise and irritability. Boom, boom, 2 bolts of lightning, 1 red and 1 gold, raced across the street. The strong wind caused by the chase caused greater ripples on the city's ground. There's no way you can catch up with me, Tony Stark laughed at Jung behind him through the intelligent monitoring system in the suit. The anti-lightning armor Type 1 is not equipped with more attack capabilities. It has given up all additional attack weapons in order to increase speed. Except for the palm cannons on the hands that directly supply energy from the reactor, this armor only has speed. This is an advantage. But it only needs this, and it can leave Jaeon behind at a speed of over 1800 km per hour. In fact, the Mark III armor already has a flight speed of Mach 2, and in terms of speed comparison, this has already surpassed Jaeon by a little. Now the anti-lightning armor with a comprehensive increase in speed has been released, even on complex roads in the city. Here, Tony Stark is equally at ease with the help of artificial intelligence. The ridicule from the front made Jaeon furious. Tony Stark seemed to deliberately take him away from here, and Jaeon, the original destination of the private residence number 10,880 in Manhattan, did not even get close to there. The Iron Man who suddenly rushed out from the intersection and taunted him completely attracted all of Riang's attention. I will kill you, just wait. He burst out with more power, and turned on the built-in storage energy of the armor. The electrical energy converted from the speed force began to accelerate. Under the overload force, Jung's body was pushed straight pull out a light and shadow. Speed 2000. Riang has broken through another zero limit of his own, but he is not happy about it now. Enemies are extremely jealous when they meet, and with the most despicable appearance to attract hatred, the Sao Bao man perfectly interprets everything that steel should do, but while running simply, it seems that it does not show any greater meaning. What is his purpose? Sir, the energy index of the suit has dropped to 45. The suit can continue to operate for 25 minutes under full power acceleration. Jarvis's thoughtful reminder sounded in Tony Stark's suit, but Tony Stark himself turned a blind eye to it. Keep accelerating, I'm going to get rid of that guy. Clear. Boom. The more violently burning armor's tail flame spurted the counter-lightning Iron Man to burst into a new round of faster speeds. The moment after the Jaeon suit accelerated within the running range of the city, the distance between the two once again changed. Being stretched. After all, what is the purpose of this family? Is it just a childish show for revenge? That might seem like Tony Stark is too narrow-minded. In fact, our playboy has never been a tolerant and positive person. His pettiness and grudge can often keep a failure in mind until the day of revenge. Jung once tried to kill him, but in the end he failed. So Tony Stark also wants this guy to try to get close to death once, and then defeat him even though the slut guy doesn't intend to kill him. Taking the lead in a seemingly aimless run, the speed was lowered to around 2,400 km per hour in urban areas. Due to the need to calculate and avoid collisions with buildings and even deceleration at corners, Tony Stark could even do it if he placed the race location in the sky. Allows the suit to move at a speed of 65 km per hour. That was the fastest ballistic missile firing rate in the world at this time in 2008, and Tony Stark can now even surpass it. Don't even think about running away. Behind him, Jaeon is still chasing. At full speed, Jaeon is not slow at all. The explosive power of 2,000 kilometers has allowed Jaeon to ignore air resistance, but for the current stage of the steel suit, there is still a long way to go. Not a short gap. What would he do? Body shock. In the half-hour-long pursuit and racing, Jaeon and Tony Stark have actually completed hundreds of laps around the entire Manhattan block. For Iron Man, who has a map of the entire Manhattan area, he can accurately navigate the corners through intelligent control. It's quite adept at decelerating and accelerating in a straight line. But similarly, the urban network distribution after passing the actual race was also completely recorded in his suit intelligence. Thanks to S.H.I.E.L.D. not taking off this guy's suit, there is nothing outside the suit except the original. Other than some minor damage, everything is fine. Boom. Jaeon sped up again. This time, 2 corners away from the street, we charged head-on. Jaeon's body and the air, which were completely in a state of shock, had reached synchronized vibrations. All obstacles in front of him no longer existed for Jaeon. There was a corner in Tony Stark's direction, and it happened that Jaeon chose to sprint through it head-on. Through the block on the building in front of the corner. Shoo! Jaeon did it easily. Sir, we have lost track of our target. Iron Man in the Iron Man suit was still decelerating into the curve, but Jarvis, the intelligent program inside the suit, could not see any trace of Jaeon through the images in the satellite surveillance. They seemed to have lost the opponents behind them. He went. At least that's what Tony Stark thinks at this moment. Tony Stark, who thought he had everything under control, never thought anything unexpected would happen. Before he could question the question, the impact had arrived. Bang! The head-on collision between lightning and metal left Riang's body still in a state of concussion. The high-speed concussion of lightning collided head-on with the steel suit that was also in the same fast-floating state. It was directly bombarded by the speed force field and the physical gravity. The powerful thrust pushed Riang's body back, and under the same force, Tony Stark also felt a disturbance in the internal program of the suit. The strong current prevented the anti-lightning suit from being penetrated by this guy again, but it also failed. It also caused the internal intelligent program of the armor to be completely offline. Tony Stark didn't have time to think too much. He could even feel that Jung must be behind him. The emergency protection ability of the suit can only be used once. This is the only countermeasure that exists in the anti-lightning suit. In addition to speed, it only has the remaining part of the ability to restrain Jung. But subsequent facts proved that this plan was ineffective, or it was ineffective for Jaeon, who also upgraded his suit. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.